Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have been concerned since the beginning of this impeachment process that it has been driven by a predetermined guilty verdict. It's unfair, it's wrong, and now every future president, Democrat or Republican, will have to worry that the impeachment process will be driven as a blunt force political instrument. It's been said that this day is sad. It's not sad, it's regrettable, but this day will end shortly. The House has had its cathartic moment. Tomorrow will begin a new day. Let's get back to work. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, we continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Ready, fire, aim. What we're hearing today are made-up articles to fit an ever-shrinking impeachment foothold. George Washington could be impeached under this criteria. Democrats believe they are saving our democracy with these hysterical made-up charges, which is odd because we're a republic, not a democracy, as they keep insisting. No one came to Congress to impeach, we hear. Several new and returning members have come specifically to impeach President Trump. I hear a lot today about sadness and solemnity. From impeachment? No, because their candidate lost in 2016. The American people chose Donald J. Trump to lead us into prosperity, not a socialist government. We will survive this day, but I call upon the American people to see through this sham and live to hear speaking
Speaker,
the
we
truth.
reserve the balance of our
Gentleman
time.
reserves. Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Adderholt.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Johnson from South Dakota, I yield 30 seconds.
Mr. Johnson's recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I'm voting no. Impeachment is not in the best interest of this country, and in fact, it has only deepened the partisan divide that truly plagues this country. When the sun comes up tomorrow, I pray with all my heart that the anger and the division in this chamber will give way to an honorableness and a productivity and a time of working together. I yield back.
Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As this air traffic controller is getting them lined for a landing, let's go back to Mr. Adderholt. 30 seconds from the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Adderholt.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, a duly elected president has been impeached by the House of Representatives by the Democrats, compelled by partisanship and not by the facts. I'm proud to stand here with President Donald Trump, and I plan to cast my vote against both articles of impeachment. This is it's not that the president abuses power. It is my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are abusing one of the most powerful tools that's been entrusted to the Congress in the Constitution by our founding fathers. Twisting the Constitution to impeach a president
time's expired.
you fear
Gentleman
will
from
be...
California.
Madam Speaker, we continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Madam Speaker, this time I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Olson.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, Webster's dictionary defines a star chamber as, quote, characterized by secrecy and often being irresponsibly arbitrary and oppressive. Sadly, my Democrat friends have turned this chamber, the people's chamber, into the star chamber of the people. One great example. The most important duty we can do as members is declare war. Next one is to impeach a president. We're hoping Republicans to have every member stand up and vote, like for Speaker, say their vote loudly. That's been denied. CNN has been denied.
Madam Speaker, we reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Gentleman, thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you, Madam Speaker. While this institution should rightfully ensure that the law is faithfully executed by the administrative branch, this exercise has shown itself to be the ultimate manipulation of the legislative branch's oversight powers in order to achieve political gain. I caution my colleagues who have placed political expediency ahead of moderation. Their votes later today will forever change this institution. Imagine a future where this body utilizes the most severe of its constitutional tools to continually put the oppositional party on trial. And with that, I yield back.
California.
Madam Speaker, it's my pleasure to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Brown.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, when I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the United States Army, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And I've done so 13 times in my 35 years of public service. That oath means everything. To serve and fight for our country, to protect and promote our values. Yet President Trump betrayed his oath. He abused his power, the immense power of the presidency. He threatened our elections by inviting foreign interference. He chose investigating a political rival over defending our national security. So today, we must use our power, the extraordinary power endowed by our Constitution and entrusted by the people, the power to impeach. We must hold President Trump accountable, or else we will be complicit in undermining our democracy, our security, and our dignity. His conduct demonstrates his unfitness to serve as commander-in-chief and warrants removal from office. The oath I took as a member of Congress is the same I took as a soldier. An oath that reminds me values matter, duty, honor, and the rule of law matter. To keep my oath to the people I serve and the country I love, today I will vote to impeach the President of the United States. I yield
Madam
back.
Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. LaHood.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've said from the beginning of this process, impeachment is and should be the nuclear option, reserved for the most treasonous activity and the most serious activity. Clearly, that has been not met here. As I've reviewed the facts and evidence as a former federal prosecutor, I've read the transcripts, I've watched the hearings, I've read the whistleblower report. That has not been met here. In addition, this process has lacked fairness, due process, and transparency. We shouldn't be here tonight doing this. This is a travesty.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Harris.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, it's unbelievable. The few Americans that are going to be watching this, because they know what the outcome is. We all know what the outcome is. They're wondering why are we trying to negate the vote of 63 million Americans instead of talking about the things that Americans care about. Prescription drug coverage, the high cost of prescription drugs, the high cost of health care, securing our borders, keeping our economy going. These are the things we should be talking about. No, instead, we're going to pass this resolution tonight and then go home for Christmas vacation instead of doing the job of America. I yield back.
Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, we continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Watkins.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I was a political newcomer before this, and just like President Trump, perhaps like me, he was naive to think that this House, that in the people's House, everybody was true and just. It's not the case. Democrats weren't saddened by this solemn day. They weren't waiting for all the evidence. This was always about politics, because they loathe the president, because he didn't play by their Beltway rules. I should have known. But the fact is, Kansas is better, the U.S. is better, and the world is better because of Donald Trump.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, we continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from California, Mr. Calvert.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My friends on the other side of the aisle have been clamoring for this day since President Trump was elected. The refusal to accept the election results and later the findings of the Mueller investigation have brought forth articles of impeachment that are negated by two simple facts. Namely, the military aid to Ukraine was provided and no investigation was ever started. The real offense is that the president won the election, and their fear is that he'll win again despite all their efforts. I will vote against the partisan attempt to overturn an election. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I continue to reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in opposition to impeachment against President Donald Trump. This is based on hearsay that were made by partisan witness behind closed doors. This impeachment is a sham, Madam Speaker, and has divided this country. Congress's wasted time on this impeachment would have been better used on addressing issues that are facing Americans, like securing our southern border, the opioid epidemic, or establishing a constitutionally mandated budget. And now American workers have to wait until the Senate trial to pass the USMCA that the President and the House Republicans have been working on for over a year. I'm disappointed in the path Congress chose to go down, Madam Speaker. And for the record, Madam Speaker, I think you're doing a wonderful job.
Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Gosar.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. It's obvious today that there's an intense hatred from the Democrats of President Donald Trump. Why do they hate the man so much? Maybe it's because of the out-of-control government gone wild, the abuses of FISA, the abuses by the FBI, the abuses in the State Department. Many of these, maybe it's just the previous administration they're trying to cover up. It's sad. This is a shameful act of what we're doing today. Shame on the Democrats. Shame on pursuing this. I ask everybody to vote no and to take notice of who votes for these articles of impeachment.
Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a sad day for America. We know this impeachment is a sham. They know this impeachment is a sham. They know we know this impeachment is a sham. And they know that most of the American people know that this impeachment is a shameful sham. We know that it began the moment the president was elected, long before he ever had a telephone call with any foreign leaders. We've heard the numerous quotations from them that validate those very points. And yet they persist in trying to overturn the duly elected president of the United States of America's election. When the president calls for
Gentleman
an
from
investigation.
California.
Madam Speaker, I've heard several of my colleagues in a row now, and it's interesting to see how very few of them want to address any of the facts of the president's misconduct, nor do they wish to defend, nor do they wish, apparently, Madam Speaker, I've struck a nerve, nor do they wish to defend a president who would extort an ally, withhold military aid to help him cheat in an election. They don't want to defend that conduct. So instead they say, oh, Democrats really want to impeach the president, or Democrats don't like the president. But what they can't say is that this president's conduct was ethical. What they can't say was that this president's conduct was legal. What they can't say was this president's conduct was constitutional. What they can't say is this president has upheld his oath of office. No, they can't say that. All they can say is, we don't like the process, or our colleagues are just too happy to impeach, or it's overturning the will of the public when it's a Republican president. Interestingly, my colleagues who supported the impeachment of Bill Clinton did not think it was overturning the will of the people. Apparently, this impeachment provision only overturns the will of the people if it's a Republican president. I would like to give them more credit than that. What is the distinction here is the seriousness of the conduct. This remedy was put in the Constitution for a reason. It's not an unconstitutional remedy. It is part of the Constitution. The only way you can conceive of this remedy as being unconstitutional is if you believe, as the president does, that he is the state, that anything that opposes him opposes the state, is by definition anti-constitutional. But that, of course, is nonsense. But it is more than nonsense. It is dangerous nonsense. Madam Speaker, I'm proud to recognize the gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Schreier, for 1 minute.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.